The story follows a 1,000-year-old mythical fox, who once fell in love with a beautiful human girl. Their love ended tragically due to their cursed destiny, but centuries later, they are reunited in the 21st century. The tale begins with a family driving home late at night. On their way, strange events unfold, and their car flips over. The parents die on the spot, leaving their young daughter, Nam, unharmed. However, she starts seeing her parents' spirits before waking up to find them alive. Confused, Nam realizes this was no ordinary dream. Soon, Nam notices her parents acting strangely. Suspicious, she grabs scissors and stabs her mother, revealing her to be something inhuman. Frightened, Nam locks herself in her room. That's when Lee appears, searching for someone who was once his first love. Realizing Nam isn't the one, Lee uses his magic to make her forget what she's seen. He takes her back to the accident site, but her parents' bodies are mysteriously missing. Fast forward 20 years, and Lee hasn't aged a day. He crashes a wedding uninvited because another mythical low-level fox, Jung, is marrying a human. Lee confronts Jung. He is surprised that she used to consume humans and is now marrying one. Jung insists she's changed and is truly in love with her human fiancé. However, Lee needs to kill her for her crimes, sparking a fight between the two. Their clash is interrupted by a woman. The evil fox, Jung, has one last wish: to complete her wedding. Lee reluctantly grants her some time, but, as soon as the ceremony is over, he barges into the bridal room intending to kill her. Jung tries to escape and calls for help, but Lee, using his extraordinary powers, overpowers everyone. Finally, he takes out his holy sword and kills her. Before dying, Jung requests Lee to erase her groom's memories of her. Lee complies, wiping away all traces of her from the groom's mind. As Lee leaves the scene, a woman named Nam sees him but can't recall where she has seen him before. News soon spreads that the bride ran away with her boyfriend. However, Nam notices inconsistencies in the story, especially when she finds the bride's abandoned wedding dress with strange fur on it. Curious, she takes the fur to a doctor named Gu, who identifies it as fox fur. Meanwhile, Lee returns to the Afterlife's mythical headquarters to report the successful execution of Jung. However, he starts to question his role as a mythical executioner. He hates killing criminals who have turned their lives around, but is reminded by the head Grim Reaper Kim that this was the price he chose to pay for the resurrection of his first love. She offers to burn the contract and free him, but Lee refuses. He still longs to reunite with his love. Back on Earth, Nam investigates the strange events at the wedding. CCTV footage reveals a man with a peculiar umbrella on a sunny day. Nam suddenly remembers seeing Lee holding the same umbrella at the wedding hall. When Gu, a friend of Lee, meets him, he warns Lee that Nam is investigating the wedding incident. Later, Nam encounters a mysterious man named Rangli, who tries to reveal Lee's true identity. However, Nam finds Rangli suspicious and dismisses him as a liar talking nonsense. Realizing he left a bad impression on Nam, Rangli retreats to his car where his girlfriend is waiting. However, he soon uncovers Lee's location and calls him. Their conversation reveals a complex, bittersweet relationship. Rangli mentions knowing something about Lee's first love, which leaves Lee momentarily silent. Later that night, Nam, following Rangli's lead, heads to a bus station to meet Lee. As the bus arrives, a strange, drunk old man stops her from boarding. But when she spots Lee inside the bus, she's left bewildered. On his request, she carries the old man to his house, yet she finds him suspicious as he seems unnaturally heavy and doesn't breathe. Inside the bus, the lights unexpectedly go out, scaring a young schoolgirl. Lee gets up and walks toward her ominously. Nam drops the man to his desired location, and takes a taxi but soon realizes the old man has suddenly vanished without a trace. Nam eventually finds the bus crashed on a road where her parents had died years ago. Inside, she discovers several dead bodies and the unconscious schoolgirl, who is still alive. She quickly calls the police. A detective, familiar with Nam, notes that one passenger is missing, suggesting they might be responsible for the crash. The next morning, Lee learns about the surviving girl and resolves to finish the job. Meanwhile, Nam visits the hospital and asks the girl if she saw the man with the umbrella. Terrified, the girl whispers, "He's coming to kill me." When Nam finally confronts Lee, they sit down to talk. She accuses him of being involved in the missing bride and bus crash incident. However, Lee is unfazed, pointing out that she has no legal authority to question him, leaving her frustrated and without answers. Lee realizes Nam is the girl he saved 20 years ago. That same night, a mysterious figure attacks the schoolgirl, seemingly devouring her. When Nam arrives, the girl appears unharmed and insists Nam take her home for safety. Nam agrees, unaware of the girl's true nature. Meanwhile, Lee receives a letter left for him by Nam at the hospital. At Nam's house, the schoolgirl claims to remember what happened on the bus but hides the fact that she was the one who killed everyone and injured Lee. Nam, suspecting her true identity, intentionally drops a glass and uses a shard to threaten her. The girl reveals her true form, transforming into Rang Lee, shocking Nam. But she is not scared because Nam had already invited Lee to her house, and when he arrives, he and Rang Lee fight. During the battle, Nam learns they are half-brothers. Unbeknownst to both, Nam cleverly records the entire encounter on a hidden camera. Before leaving, Rang Lee warns Lee to find out who his first love is within a month or see her dead, leaving him confused. Lee then erases Nam's memory using his magic, but apparently he fails at it for some unexplained reasons. The next night, Lee returns home to find a video of his fight with Rang Lee playing on his laptop and Nam standing on his balcony. Nam confronts him. He is confused why she still remembers him, but Nam threatens him, revealing she has more copies of the footage, and abruptly jumps off the skyscraper, forcing Lee to use his powers to save her. This confirms Nam's suspicion that Lee isn't human. Taking advantage of the moment, she injects him with a mysterious substance. This triggers a flashback to 1,000 years ago when Lee was a powerful mountain fox who ruled over the jungle. A fearless human girl approached him and treated him like an equal, melting his pride and ego. He fell deeply in love with her. When she died, Lee was devastated and tried to stop her spirit from leaving the human world, which angered Kim. Lee then gave her spirit a magical spell, hoping to recognize her in the future. Over the centuries, he met many who resembled her but none who bore the spell. The next morning, Lee wakes to find Nam unafraid of him despite knowing his true identity. She asks him to help find her missing parents, claiming he is her only clue. When he refuses, she threatens to leak the footage. Enraged, Lee takes the sight from one of her eyes. Realizing her genuine desperation, Nam throws away the flash drive and pleads with him to help her. Moved, Lee consults the Grim Reaper woman to ask if his first love has reincarnated. Her stiff demeanor confirms it, but she doesn't know in what form she has returned. Meanwhile, Nam receives a message from Lee asking for her parents' names and dates of birth, hinting that he is willing to help her after all. Nam meets Lee at a restaurant and learns her parents are still alive. Overwhelmed with joy, she apologizes to Lee for her earlier behavior. When Lee plans to part ways, Nam insists he help her find her parents and expresses curiosity about his mystical world. Following Lee's advice, Nam lures her coworker into a dark, empty room and tosses coins in front of him, exposing his true nature as a mystical creature. When he tries to harm her, Lee intervenes to protect her. During the fight, the creature takes Nam hostage, prompting Lee to remind her of her vulnerability as a human and warns her to stay away from his world. After saving Nam from him, Lee tortures the creature to learn about Rang Lee's whereabouts, discovering the coworker was working with him. Meanwhile, Rang Lee, drinking alone, is confronted by Lee. Lee accuses him of potentially trying to harm his first love as he told him the day before that she's going to die within a month. Furious, Rang Lee vows to punish Lee and make his life miserable for prioritizing a human over their family, hinting that he already knows who his first love is. Later, news breaks about fishermen discovering a human skull. Intrigued, Nam investigates with Lee. They visit the deceased man's daughter, and question the villagers, who refuse to reveal anything. Frustrated, Lee turns to the spirits for answers. They encounter the spirit of a guardian tree, a little girl who is bound to the tree by ropes. She explains how other holy spirits fled due to the spread of evil, but she couldn't escape because she was tied. Moved by her plight, Nam cuts the ropes, freeing the spirit. The girl thanks Nam, recalling her kindness, though Nam has no memory of visiting before. The spirit urges Nam to head north for more answers. Following the guidance, they discover an old cave that stirs unknown memories for Nam. She takes out an old photo of her parents and realizes they visited this cave when her mother was pregnant with her. Later that night, Lee suspects Nam might be his reincarnated first love. He checks again for the magical spell but is disappointed when he finds nothing. Though upset, he can't help but notice that Nam shares the same qualities and gestures as his lost love. The next morning, Lee takes Nam to meet two frightened village women, who reveal that similar mysterious incidents have occurred before, suggesting they might be part of a ritual. Meanwhile, one of the fishermen starts experiencing extreme thirst, drinking gallons of water but never feeling satisfied. He grows frantic until someone suddenly chokes him to death. Hearing the strange news, Nam is shocked, but Lee predicts more deaths are imminent. While searching for more fishermen, they find another one who is overwhelmed by insatiable hunger. As they question him, they deduce that the fisherman had eaten his father. Suddenly, the fisherman begins craving raw meat and chokes to death on a piece of human hair. Elsewhere, he, who wished for her father's friends' deaths as revenge, meets Rangli. He tells her he has already killed 2 of them and only one remains. Rangli then visits a shaman named Sun, who confirms that a snake-like spirit once killed by Li is trapped in a well. Sun is puzzled as Rangli, being Li's brother, seems intent on freeing this powerful enemy. Rangli explains calmly that foxes always repay debts, and he must settle the score with Li for what happened centuries ago. Later, Rangli encounters Nam, who is wandering alone. He offers to grant her wish of finding her parents, but Nam declines, knowing he would demand something precious in return. When Li reunites with Nam, he learns about her encounter with Rangli and her rejection of his offer. Li grows concerned, realizing Rangli's increasing involvement with Nam. At the same time, Rangli's assistant, Ki, sneaks into the mythical being's restaurant to search for something in a private room. Gu, noticing her suspicious behavior, confronts her. Using her beauty and charm, Ki distracts Gu, steals his locket, and escapes. Gu quickly informs Li, as the locket is crucial for Li to communicate with animals. Despite everything, Li is troubled by his feelings for Nam. He doesn't understand why he feels drawn to someone who has threatened and challenged him repeatedly. As Nam ventures deeper into the woods, she finds the frightened fisherman who discovered the skull. She chases him but is struck with a hammer. Li arrives in time to defend her, causing the man to flee. While applying an old remedy to Nam's injury, something strange happens. Nam grabs Li's neck, claiming to be his first love and demanding to know why he killed her. This triggers Li's memories of his past but leaves him in denial, unwilling to believe Nam is truly her reincarnation. When Nam regains consciousness, Li senses Rangli's presence nearby. He urges Nam to return to safety while he deals with his brother. As Nam runs, she encounters Sun, who pretends to be a normal human. When Nam questions if she knows her parents, Sun lies, claiming to have met her pregnant mother once who came to perform a sacred ritual to ensure a safe delivery. However, Nam realizes her mother, being a doctor and skeptic of such practices, would never believe in rituals. She confronts Sun, discovering she is actually a shaman. Sun grins, revealing Nam is already trapped, and she collapses from the effects of a drugged tea. When Rangli reveals to Li that Nam is about to be sacrificed, Li tries to locate her but finds her scent completely gone. Desperate, he commands the wind and forest to guide him. He arrives just as Sun prepares the ritual but is blocked by a magical barrier. Using his divine powers, Li summons rain to weaken the barrier and lightning to strike Sun, killing her and saving Nam. As they return home, Nam learns Sun was once a human granted an extended life by Li centuries ago. Nam questions why Li keeps saving her despite his apparent indifference toward others, but Li cannot bring himself to answer. Meanwhile, hypnotized villagers gather at the well, where Rangli oversees the birth of a mysterious child, whom he hands to Quan. The next morning, Nam and Li are shocked to discover the villagers have vanished. Investigating, they find strange bamboo sticks by the seashore and dead crows, signs of a ritual. He mentions hearing a crying baby at 2 a.m., though there are no pregnant women on the island. Back in the city, Nam and Li part ways temporarily. Li meets Rangli, who cryptically warns him that the mythical snake who killed Li's first love might be returning. Rangli provokes Li, challenging him to finish what he started centuries ago by killing him. This triggers Li's memory of punishing Rangli for massacring innocent villagers in a misguided act of revenge. Despite Rangli's actions, Li still sees a kind heart buried beneath his brother's anger and refuses to kill him. Later, Li meets the Grim Reaper, who is furious that he killed a human on the island, violating their laws. Li defends his actions, saying he did it to protect someone precious, though he is still unsure if Nam is truly his first love. Meanwhile, Nam invites Li for a meal at her house. Li brings mugwort instead of flowers, which Nam surprisingly appreciates. She pats Li's head affectionately, a gesture that reminds him of his first love. When Nam watches an old recording of her parents, she covers her ears out of sadness, a habit of his past love. Li grows more confused. Back at the Grim Reaper's headquarters, Li learns the higher judges have decided to punish him for killing a human by trapping him in a mortal body for a week. Elsewhere, Gu, still preoccupied with thoughts of Ki, is startled when she barges into his house. She is upset that Gu didn't search for her after their first encounter. Now she tries to seduce him by her beauty and charm. However, Gu is rather concerned seeing scars on Ki's body, similar to the other animals who were smuggled here from other countries. But the way he treats and looks at her like a gentleman makes Ki uncomfortable, and she abruptly leaves the place. As Nam attends the funeral of her co-worker's mother, she encounters Rangli, whose presence unsettles her. Despite his claims of hating humans for destroying his home centuries ago and resenting Lee for siding with them, Nam boldly points out that Rengli's actions clearly show how much he still loves his brother. Rengli scoffs, finding Lee foolish for sacrificing his divine existence for a mere human girl. Even now, he hints that Lee is enduring divine punishment for saving her, explaining that one day in the divine world equals 7 years in the human world. Lee must survive 49 years without food or rest, testing his endurance to the extreme. When Nam asks for Lee's location, Rengli cryptically warns her to stay away and advises her not to sleep if she wants to survive. As Nam moves through the hallway, she senses something eerie. 2 young girls suddenly appear, claiming they are looking for their father. But the chilling truth is they are spirits. Before they can harm Nam, her co-worker interrupts, causing the spirits to vanish. However, as they step outside, the spirits return, tormenting Nam and causing her to collapse on the road. When she regains consciousness, she finds herself with her co-worker, who begins acting strangely, revealing the presence of an evil force nearby. Meanwhile, Lee, now aware that Nam is the reincarnation of his first love, grows anxious for her safety, knowing Rengli may harm her. Desperate to protect her, he contacts the Grim Reaper, pleading to undergo the stricture trial, where 49 years of divine punishment can be completed in one day. To complete the trial, Lee must cross a treacherous bridge while enduring relentless attacks. Sharp blades rain down on him, cutting deeply into his flesh. Despite the agonizing pain, he presses on, determined to return to Nam. Back in the mortal world, the 2 ghostly girls become obsessed with Nam, demanding her body. Terrified, Nam flees her home as the spirits chase her through the streets. Nam, chased relentlessly by the spirits, stumbles into an empty shop for refuge. She scrambles to the rooftop, but the spirits persist, their intent clear: to push her to her death. Just as she teeters on the edge, they shove her off. At the same time, Lee, heavily injured from his trial and weakened by his human state, reaches the end of the divine bridge. Summoning every ounce of strength, he emerges in the mortal world just in time to catch Nam mid-fall. Seeing him battered and barely standing, Nam is overwhelmed with emotion. A single tear falls onto him, activating the ancient spell he placed centuries ago. Lee realizes the truth. Nam is indeed the reincarnation of his first love. Back at her house, Nam tends to Lee's injuries, deciding it's too dangerous to take him to a hospital. While patching him up, she notices his exhaustion and vulnerability. Lee, now fully convinced of her identity, quietly vows to protect her at all costs. Meanwhile, the reincarnated snake god continues to grow at an alarming rate. Overnight, the once infant entity matures to the physical appearance of a 10-year-old child, radiating a sinister aura. Vet Gu visits Lee to check on him, surprising Nam when she learns that Gu is also a fox and a longtime guardian of Lee. Intrigued, she asks Gu about Lee's past. Gu reluctantly shares stories, explaining that Lee was once a revered mountain fox who fell in love with a human girl. Nam, curious about the origins of their bond, presses Lee for details. Lee recounts the story. Centuries ago, his first love approached him fearlessly, treating him as an animal rather than a god. At first, her audacity frustrated him, but her genuine kindness and determination softened his heart. She begged him to train her as a warrior so she could defeat the Dragon King, who was masquerading as her father. Slowly, their companionship blossomed into love. Meanwhile, Quan hires a babysitter for the rapidly growing snake god. The babysitter is immediately unnerved by the boy's eerie demeanor. When he touches her, he drains her life force, leaving her lifeless. The snake god grins, his power growing with each soul he consumes. Elsewhere, Qi confides in Rengli about Gu. She reveals her discomfort at how Gu pitted her after noticing the scars on her body. Rengli, in his typically dark humor, suggests she should make Gu blind so he wouldn't see them anymore. Later, Rengli encounters a group of youngsters tormenting a puppy. Enraged by their cruelty, he punishes them harshly, leaving them terrified. However, when he sees the injured puppy, he's haunted by memories of his traumatic past and cannot bring himself to care for it. Qi, however, takes the puppy under her wing. Qi brings the puppy to Gu's clinic, asking for his help. Gu agrees but demands the return of his stolen locket before proceeding. Qi reluctantly complies, recognizing that Gu is unlike anyone she's met. His kindness starts to affect her, softening her usual harsh demeanor. Lee later visits the Grim Reaper to ask about Nam's parents. She reveals an unsettling truth. Nam's parents are untraceable, they are neither in the human afterlife nor in the mortal world. This deepens the mystery of their disappearance and raises questions about their fate. Lee meets with a one-eyed old man who claims to know about Nam's missing parent. The old man directs Lee to the governor, Moon Bear, who may hold answers. Meanwhile, Nam is dining with her co-workers at the office when Lee abruptly arrives, forcibly pulling her away. Her co-workers are left shocked as Lee drags her to a crowded, peculiar place teeming with mythical creatures gathering for their annual festival. Leaving Nam behind momentarily to investigate, Lee returns only to find her missing. He searches through the crowd and spots a woman who looks eerily like his first love. He chases her to a bridge, and her appearance stirs old memories, leading him to impulsively kiss her. When Lee consults a fortune teller at the event, the man cryptically warns him and Nam to stay away from each other, hinting that their connection could lead to death for one of them. As they leave the fortune teller's booth, an arrow flies toward them, bearing a note instructing them to meet at the governor's office. Unbeknownst to them, Rangli is also at the festival and seeks a mysterious device from the fortune teller that can reveal the past. However, the fortune teller demands something precious in exchange, and Rangli finds himself uncertain of what he holds most dear. Lee and Nam meet Governor Moonbear, who recalls a human seeking his help years ago. The man, rather than taking the little girl he sought, ended up abducting her parents instead. Moonbear's cryptic statement adds more mystery to Nam's parents' disappearance. Meanwhile, Gu takes Ki on a casual date to thank her for her kindness toward the injured dog. Ki, confused by Gu's genuine intentions, denies any romantic interest in him. However, Gu's sincerity begins to chip away at her defenses. Rangli, struggling to identify what is precious to him, calls Lee and arranges to meet. Before their meeting, Lee casts a spell on his shoes to track the man who took Nam's parents, but Rangli must unknowingly wear the enchanted shoes. At the shop, the fortune teller inspects Lee and declares him to be Rangli's most precious possession. Rangli agrees to trade Lee for the device, sealing the deal. However, outside the shop, Rangli realizes his shoes are missing and dons Lee's enchanted shoes instead. As the transaction concludes, the fortune teller traps Lee in his magical bag, adding him to his collection. Nam faces a harrowing decision: choose between saving her parents or freeing Lee. Determined to rescue Lee first, she races against time to find something precious to offer. She returns to the shop with a cherished toy, a birthday gift from her parents that she has kept for over 2 decades. The fortune teller inspects the toy but deems it unworthy. However, upon examining Nam, he discovers she possesses a rare lucky charm gifted by Lee, an extraordinary blessing that guarantees an overwhelmingly prosperous fate. The fortune teller demands her lucky charm in exchange for Lee's freedom. Without hesitation, Nam agrees. As the deal is struck, her palm lines shift, signaling her altered destiny. Lee is freed, but Nam's future is now uncertain. The snake god becomes aware of Nam's sacrifice, sensing the ripple it creates in the mystical balance. With each human life consumed, the snake god grows stronger, now taking the form of an adult man. Lee goes to meet with the Grim Reaper lady, and from her, he learns that Nam has lost the lucky charm he gave her. When Lee confronts Nam about her lucky charm, she reluctantly admits to trading it for his freedom but downplays its importance. She also shares a troubling dream where a little boy greeted her in an eerie voice. Alarmed by her vulnerability, Lee decides to stay at her house for her safety. However, Nam feels uneasy with Lee standing watch all night. To ease her discomfort, he agrees to sleep beside her in bed, though their proximity stirs complex emotions in both. Elsewhere, Rangli is frustrated by his lingering attachment to Lee, even though he resents him. While wandering, he accidentally loses the magical goggles he obtained from the fortune teller. The device, capable of revealing someone's past, falls into the hands of a child. The next morning, Lee attempts to cook breakfast for Nam, but his culinary skills prove disastrous. He calls Gu for help, who assists in preparing a meal that impresses Nam. Determined to protect her, Lee tags along with Nam to her office, waiting vigilantly outside to observe anyone entering. Meanwhile, Gu notices Rangli hurrying through the streets, clearly searching for something. Rangli, desperate to recover the goggles, becomes agitated as Ki informs him that a child has found them. Gu, angered by Ki's involvement with Rangli, ends up being captured by Rangli. Rangli interrogates Gu about Lee's plans, but Gu refuses to reveal anything. Frustrated, Rangli sends incriminating photos of Gu to Lee, summoning him to their location. When Lee arrives, he and Rangli exchange tense words. Lee, now aware of the snake god's revival, accuses Rangli of withholding vital information. Rangli feigns indifference but abruptly leaves when Ki calls, leaving Lee and Gu behind. Rangli tracks down the child who found the goggles and retrieves them. Using the goggles, he discovers that the child is the reincarnation of his first pet dog, stirring bittersweet memories from his past. Lee takes the injured Gu back to his house, but Gu is more hurt emotionally than physically. He's upset because he's fallen for Ki, someone he sees as a player who doesn't even have real feelings for him. The next night, Rangli sends a pair of magical glasses to Nam. When Nam looks in the mirror with the glasses, she discovers a shocking truth. In the past, Li used her as bait to defeat the evil snake god. Rangli informs Li about sending the glasses to Nam. Alarmed, Li rushes home and finds Nam standing there, devastated and in shock, realizing that Li never truly loved her, she was just a pawn in his plan. To watch part 2, please comment and like the video.